Some people say living well is the best revenge. I disagree. The best revenge is methodical, calculated, and devastatingly public. By the time I was finished, not only was I living well, they were living in ruins. I met Ellie during my sophomore year of college. She was everything I'd ever wanted, brilliant, ambitious, with a smile that lit up any room she entered. Within weeks, we were inseparable. Within months, I knew she was the one I wanted to build a future with. Mike had been my best friend since we were 14, the brother I never had. He was there through every significant moment of my life, including the day I met Ellie. The three of us became a unit. Mike was the one who helped me pick out the engagement ring I planned to give Ellie on our 5-year anniversary trip to Hawaii. I should have noticed the signs. The unexplained absences, the new distance between us. The way Ellie's phone would always be face down when I entered the room. But when you trust someone completely, you don't look for betrayal. It's like watching a horror movie. The audience sees the killer, but the character walking obliviously into danger remains blind until the knife is already in their back. My knife came on a random Tuesday. I had come home early from a business trip, planning to surprise Ellie. Instead, I was the one who got the surprise. The sounds coming from our bedroom left nothing to the imagination. Still, some masochistic part of me needed visual confirmation. The image of my girlfriend and best friend in our bed is burned into my memory like a brand. They didn't notice me at first. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, watching these two people I loved most in the world destroying everything I thought we had built. When they finally saw me, the room exploded into chaos, Ellie crying, Mike stammering excuses, both of them fumbling for clothes. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I just asked, with eerie calmness that surprised even me, how long? The answer, 18 months, hit me like a physical blow. A year and a half of lies, hundreds of nights when I thought she was working late or staying with her sister, countless guys' nights with Mike that had never happened. Every memory from the past year and a half was now tainted, recontextualized. I walked out without another word and checked into a hotel. The barrage of texts and calls started immediately. Their messages oscillated between desperate apologies and attempts to rationalize what they'd done. It just happened. We never meant to hurt you. We tried to stop so many times. The standard script of unfaithful partners and disloyal friends throughout history. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I methodically excised them from my life. I moved out of our apartment while Ellie was at work. I blocked both their numbers. I switched gyms and coffee shops. I told mutual friends I needed space without explaining why. I had no interest in being the subject of gossip or, worse, pity. For 6 months, I focused on myself. I threw myself into work, earned a promotion. I traveled, I reconnected with old friends. From the outside, it probably looked like I was healing. In reality, I was just letting the wounds scab over while the infection of bitterness festered underneath. Then, almost exactly 8 months after D-Day, I received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a wedding invitation Mike and Ellie were getting married. The audacity was breathtaking. I laughed until my sides hurt, alone in my apartment. These two people, who had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible, were now inviting me to celebrate their union, a union built on the ashes of my relationship. I was about to throw the invitation away when I noticed the handwritten note on the back. James, I know we hurt you deeply and will regret that forever. We're trying to make something good out of our terrible mistake. It would mean everything if you could find it in your heart to attend. Mike would even like you to be his best man and give a toast. No one knows you like you do. Ellie, most people would have crumpled up that note and set it on fire. I carefully placed it back in the envelope, because in that moment, the nebulous anger that had been poisoning me for months crystallized into something sharper, more purposeful. They wanted me to give a toast. I'd give them one they'd never forget. I responded to the invitation with a carefully crafted email expressing forgiveness and acceptance. I wrote that while I wasn't ready to be best man, I would attend and would be honored to give a toast. Their relief was palpable in their responses. Mike called, tearfully thanking me for my incredible grace. Ellie sent a long message about second chances and how much my forgiveness meant to them. I let them believe what they needed to believe. Over the next 4 months, I put my plan into motion. I gradually reintegrated myself into their lives. Occasional coffees, brief, carefully managed social interactions. Each time, I played the role of the wounded but healing friend. I let them see what they wanted to see, a man working through his pain, finding closure, moving toward forgiveness. In reality, I was gathering intelligence. In our conversations, I learned everything about their relationship, how it started, not just happened as they'd claimed. Mike had pursued Ellie for months, how they'd sneaked around behind my back, the elaborate lies they'd constructed. The people who had known and said nothing. I also learned about their wedding plans. Ellie's wealthy parents were funding an extravagant ceremony at an upscale vineyard. 200 guests, including family members who were flying in from around the country, college friends, work colleagues, and business contacts of her father's. Their social media was filled with countdown posts and engagement photo shoots. They were so invested in creating the appearance of a perfect love story that they were willing to include the man they had betrayed in their narrative. I became their redemption arc, the proof that what they had done wasn't so terrible, since even I had forgiven them. The night before the wedding, at the rehearsal dinner, Mike pulled me aside and, with tears in his eyes, told me he'd never had a better friend than me. I don't deserve your friendship, man. What I did was unforgivable. I smiled and told him tomorrow's about new beginnings. He had no idea how right I was. The wedding day arrived, perfect weather, picture-perfect venue, and a bride and groom who thought they had successfully outrun the consequences of their actions. I sat through the ceremony with a pleasant smile plastered on my face, watching as they exchanged vows about honesty, fidelity, and respect. The reception was in full swing. When the time came for toasts, the maid of honor went first with a tearful speech about soulmates. Then the microphone was handed to me. The room quieted as the best friend turned unwitting victim took center stage. I still remember the confident smile on Mike's face, the hopeful look in Ellie's eyes. They thought this was their final victory, their former victim publicly bestowing his blessing on their union. For those who don't know me, my name is James. I've known Mike since we were 14 years old, and I dated Ellie for nearly 5 years. I paused, letting that sink in for those who might not know our history. When they asked me to give this toast, I spent a long time thinking about what to say. I took a sip of champagne, looking around the room. I'd like to start by talking about trust. Trust is the foundation of any relationship. Without it, you have nothing. Mike nodded enthusiastically. Ellie beamed. I trusted Mike with everything. My secrets, my insecurities, my dreams, and for 5 years I trusted Ellie with my heart. Another pause. That's what made it so devastating to come home early from a business trip 18 months before their relationship officially began and find them having sex in the bed Ellie and I shared. The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Mike's smile vanished. Ellie's face drained of color, but that's not even the worst part. I continued, my voice steady. The worst part was the 18 months of lying that followed. The worst part was my girlfriend and best friend looking me in the eye day after day while they carried on their affair behind my back. Ellie's father half rose from his seat, but her mother put a restraining hand on his arm, her eyes wide with shock. I've had a lot of time to reflect on what happened, and for a while I was consumed by anger. But standing here today, looking at these two people who betrayed every ounce of trust I gave them, I realize something important. I lifted my glass toward them. I want to thank you both. You taught me an invaluable lesson about human nature. You showed me that the people closest to you are capable of unimaginable betrayal. And most importantly, you freed me from a relationship with a woman who could never be faithful and a friendship with a man who never understood loyalty. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. This is my wedding gift to you. Inside is every text message, every email, every piece of evidence of your affair that I've collected. There are also statements from the 3 people who knew about your affair from the beginning but kept your secret. I placed the envelope on the head table. I've sent digital copies to both your families as well. I thought they deserved to know exactly who they're welcoming into their families today. The room had erupted into whispers. Ellie was openly crying now. Mike looked like he might vomit, so let's raise a glass, I said, lifting mine high. To Mike and Ellie, may your marriage be as honest and faithful as your relationship began. I placed the microphone gently on the table, nodded once to the stunned crowd, and walked out without looking back. The aftermath was exactly what you'd expect. The wedding reception dissolved into chaos. From what I heard later, Ellie's father, a man who valued his reputation above all else, was livid. Mike's parents, deeply religious people who had raised their son with strict moral values, were devastated and ashamed. The marriage was annulled within 3 weeks. Ellie moved back in with her parents. Mike relocated to another state. It's been for years since that day. I've built a new life for myself, new city, great job, and eventually a relationship with a woman who understands the value of honesty. Last month, I received a message from Mike. It was long, rambling, filled with apologies and reflections on how his life had imploded after the wedding. He's been in therapy. He hasn't had a successful relationship since. He wanted me to know that what I did at the wedding was deserved, that he thinks about it every day, and how one terrible choice altered the trajectory of his life. I read the message once, then deleted it without responding. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. People often ask me if I regret what I did, if publicly humiliating them was worth it. If I wouldn't have been better off just moving on with my life, choosing forgiveness over revenge. My answer is always the same. They didn't just betray me. They invited me to celebrate that betrayal. They wanted me to stand up in front of their friends and family and bless their relationship. They wanted to use me as proof of their absolution. Instead, I made them face the truth they had been running from. Sometimes the best toast is the one that burns.